Are you ready to take the good parent test? This is an episode for the podcast that I have been waiting for almost exactly 21 years to record. So, the good parent test. This is going to be a little bit tongue in cheek. Number one, I am not setting myself up as being the definitive guide on parenting, but I do know this. We kind of self sabotage ourselves because we tell ourselves we cannot screw this up. This is the most important job in the world, and I cannot mess this up. And then how do we feel after that? We feel stressed. And what do we do when we're stressed? Well, we usually get a little bit nervous and a little bit anxious, and we don't do our best work. It's crazy how that works. And so I want to talk about this topic. I want to talk about my experience parenting and share with you my good parent test. What I have, when other women come to me and they're like, hey, my highest goal in life, my big goal, I want to succeed at being parent. This is one of the stages that I take them through, one of the questions that we ask. So, parenting, probably the most loaded topic in the world. No doubt, most people consider it to be the most important job in the world. But before we can define what is a good parent, we've got to decide this little thing right here. Who is going to define what is a good parent? Is it going to be other parents? Is it going to be our parents? Is it going to be our kids? By the way, this is fun if you have multiple kids because they're all going to have different definitions of what a good parent is. And they're all going to have different opinions on whether or not you're hitting that. So it might sound like a great idea to pick your kids to be the people who decide if you're a good parent or not. But half the class is going to give you an A and half the class is going to flunk you. It's such a subjective topic. And it really is. And that is a problem with parenting is we think that when we say the word test, we think it's an objective topic. And that's why this is a little tongue in cheek because it is subjective. So I really think the person who's going to decide and define whether or not you're a good parent and the definition of what a good parent is, the best person is yourself, not even your spouse, but yourself. It's really, really interesting because when you go back to scripture, even in scripture, there is not like one definitive, a good parent checks these 5 boxes. There's the often quoted train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. And there is also the passage in the New Testament where it talks about God's explaining a good father. If his son asks for bread, is he going to give him a scorpion? No, a good father knows how to give good gifts to his children. So, definition number one, someone who gives good gifts to their children. That's pretty open to interpretation. And it should be because I think the reason why it is open to interpretation is because every parent and every child, they're unique because we're all unique. So if we're going to come up with a definition, it's like, we're all unique, it's going to be a unique definition, then technically, not technically, not technically, let's take that word back. But most of the times, if we're trying to define this, we're going to try to define a lot of stuff because we're coming from the context of, what did my parents do? What did my parents not do? What does society do? What does society not do? And there's a lot of pressure on parents to get it right. So I thought sometimes it's helpful to figure out what a good parent is to explore what a bad parent is and just make sure we don't do those things. Okay. So because again, you guys, I'm all over the place on this topic a little bit because I, parenting for me has been the greatest privilege of my life. And there have been some high moments and there have been some low moments, but looking back, the greatest privilege of my life was to raise my two children. I have a daughter who's 21 right now. I have a son who's 19. So proud of them. So proud to be their mom. And I really did not want to talk about this topic publicly before that. In fact, let me tell you a humorous story. So, when my daughter was first born, somebody gave us and recommended to us this book called Baby Wise. And it was talking about how to get your children to sleep through the night. And if you know me at all, you know that I love to read a good book and I love to learn and then try to apply it. And so I was like, thank you. Thank you for the book. I read the book. I did what the book said. And my daughter did exactly as the book said. By 6 weeks, she was sleeping through the night. From very early on, she was giving me a 5 hour sleep at night. And it was like, oh my goodness, this really, this is amazing. I feel like I have figured this out. So I'm recommending this book to everybody and everyone. And by the way, there are some great principles in there that I think still hold true. Honestly, I have not read the book since for 20 years. So, I'm going on my memory here. But I remember one specific principle of teach your child to fall asleep, not by giving them a bottle so that they don't associate, eating and soothing themselves with falling asleep. And I'm like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. That would probably, help me too. Nighttime snacking right before I go to bed. No, feed them, have an alert time, and then allow them to learn how to fall asleep on their own, I think is how it was talking about. And then when they wake up, and it talked about how when they wake up, if they wake up grumpy, chances are they haven't had enough of a nap or enough sleep, and they're just in the middle of a lighter REM cycle, I believe is what it was. And so give them more time. That piece right there was huge for me because invariably when I did that, if they kind of woke up a little bit fussy, if you just waited a minute or two, they'd fall back asleep and then later they'd wake up happy. And it's like, oh, okay, because I would have just picked up the child right then. So anyway, for all of you guys who haven't read the book, and there you go. There's the brief synopsis of it. So anyway, so I had my daughter. She followed the book. It was amazing. So then we were expecting my son. He's born 2 years later, almost 2 years exactly after my daughter was born. Did the exact same thing. And he didn't sleep. When they're supposed to be sleeping like, 14, 16 hours a day? Not this kid. Wasn't sleeping. Didn't need to sleep. Seemed like he needed less sleep than me. I'm like, what is going on? I am doing the exact same thing with the exact, I've got the book here. I'm even referencing it. That's when I realized, parenting, there is not one perfect formula for parenting. Every child is unique. It'll be necessary to lightly experiment to see what works best for you and your child. Be open to that. Be open-minded in your parenting instead of closed and rigid-minded. I am very, I like a good formula. I like a step-by-step process. And this, I realize parenting is not going to look like that. So then I had to, come at parenting with a little bit of a more open spirit. Okay, a book is not going to tell me exactly what I need to do. I might have to figure this out on my own. So I did. And I'm going to share with you in a minute some of the things that I thought that helped me figure out parenting on my own, some of the thoughts that served me. But first of all, I want to share with you some of the things I reasoned out. This is what bad parenting would look like. There's a reason why I share this. See, in our desire to be the very, very best parent possible to our child, because our child deserves to have the best parent, we stress ourselves out. So, number one, if you want to be a bad parent, tongue in cheek here, be stressed all the time. Okay. Make all of your kids' behavior about you. Assume you're doing it all wrong. Be stressed, always be asking for advice, always be worrying, always be trying something new, always know that you're not doing enough. Remind yourself, this is the big one. Make sure you remind yourself over and over and over again that one mistake can scar your child for a lifetime. Because that's what happens when we say we want to be the best parent possible and we realize we cannot even possibly be the best parent possible. Then we get all stressed. We're stressing ourselves out about being the best parent. And then we do these things. And the result of parenting from a fear model of having, thoughts that generate fear that create stress in our lives is that we do actions that are not the best parenting actions. What's another thing that a bad parent would do? Well, they'd make life all about the child. No matter how tired you are, ignore yourself, ignore your health, and ignore your needs so that you can fully concentrate on making sure that your child never experiences a moment of boredom or loneliness or negative emotion. In fact, just have one child because it's going to be too exhausting. The first one is going to be so exhausting, you're not going to have any time and attention for the second one. And not to mention, you're going to be cheating the first one of attention if you have more than one child. And so to really make life all about your child, just have one. These are all the things that I reasoned in my mind because sometimes it helps me to imagine, wait, what is it I don't actually want to look like? So I know what I do want to look like. That's where my mind is going through here. Do it all for your child. Do everything for your child because they only have one childhood. Because it's easier for you to do it than it is for them to do it. And because honest to goodness, they're going to get it all wrong anyway. So you should just do everything for your child so they don't have to worry about it. And so that you don't have to worry about things not getting done right. And then also make sure you protect them from everything. Protect them from germs, negative experiences, criticism, disappointment, the consequences of their own decision, or from even having to ever make a decision. Okay. I can't tell you how much it was so helpful for me to think, what would, from my perspective, bad parenting look like? Because in fear, in stress, I could be tempted to do all of these things. And I had to kind of like blow up the consequences of showing what would this lead to? It would lead to, my poor kid would have a mom that was completely stressed out all the time, that was giving her and him an example that once you have kids, life is over, and that kids are not capable of doing anything, not as good as adults, and can't handle anything. So protect them from everything. And so once I realized that in my desire to be the best parent possible, I was freaking myself out and going to create being the worst parent possible or, bad parent. Man, you guys, I even hate using these words good and bad because, like I said, it's a loaded topic. So take all this with a grain of salt and compassion and understanding. Anyway, once I explored myself, what would a bad parenting look like? If I really let myself go, it would look like this. Then I was able to explore what good parenting would look like. And for me, I had to remind myself, number one, no one does their best job when they're stressed. No one comes at it. No one creates a great relationship when you're stressed. So Number two, relax and enjoy the journey. What if there's no perfect parenting formula? And then number three, and this is the one that my mom shared with me, and I've heard her share it with other people over and over again. It's such a beautiful thought. God gave this child to you, and God gave you to your child. There was no mistake here. God, in his infinite wisdom, thought it was great to pair you two together for both of your benefits. So don't allow yourself to believe the notion that you can't, that you're not the parent for this child, or that you don't know, quote, how to handle this child. It's not even true. It's a false notion. God gave this child to you. God gave you to this child for both of your benefits, to learn from each other. That child is going to teach you how to be a better parent. And you are going to have all that's necessary to enable that child to grow into the person that God wants them to be. And then 4, see what works for both of you. Okay. A lot of times we think that parenting is all about the parent sacrificing all of their needs to meet the child's needs. That is what I call a scarcity mindset, where we think that there is only enough to go around for one person, not both people. It's a win-lose mindset. And we always want to think in an abundance mindset. We always want to think in a win-win mindset. We always want to realize that. Here's an example. I will not be the best parent to my children if I don't get enough sleep too. If I am running around so much, not taking care of myself, then what's going to happen? I don't get enough sleep. I get grumpy. I yell at them. I beat myself up. I create unnecessary drama. All these things that could have been solved just by having, during the early years, a little designated time for a nap if I needed it. Okay. So imagine that what's good for you is good for your child. What's good for your child is good for you. And look for those win-win scenarios. And then 5, I want you, here's the parenting test. Here's the quote, good parent test. You are going to ask yourself the big parenting question. All right, you ready for it? Here's the question. When my child is grown up, what do I hope that he or she says about how I parented? And write that down. I'm going to repeat it again. When my child is grown up, what do I hope he or she says about me and how I parented? Write it down, okay? And then number 2, realize, so after you take the time to answer that, realize this. This is your actual parenting goal. This is the definition. This is the test. This is the standard that you are holding to yourself. So that's your parenting goal, to define that, to not, hear me carefully. The goal is not to actually get your child to actually say that about you, but for you to know what it is so that you can daily live that out. So that someday, no matter what your kids say, because they will have different opinions than you, they are different people than you can remind yourself that, yes, I got some things wrong, and I also got some things right, but I was always aiming to be this. This is the parent that I was aiming to be. All right. So I thought it would be helpful to you for me to share my personal phrase, sentence, definition, my personal good parenting test. By the way, I want to say this again. This is not my husband's parenting test. In fact, I don't even know if he has one, um, because each parent is individual in their parenting. So this is about you, yourself, and your child. Okay. Don't worry about your spouses. My parenting goal was I decided someday I would want my children to say, my children to truly believe that she loved us fiercely, she raised us to be independent, and she wanted what was best for us. That is so true for me that every time I think about it, I tear up. You can probably hear it in my voice right now. Look, do we get it right all the time? No, we can't. We can't possibly get it right. We're imperfect. That was not a mistake. God gave imperfect you to the imperfect child. Excuse me. That child, more than anybody else, probably knows how to push your buttons to bring out the imperfect side of you even more. And that can be frustrating. Don't let it be. Remind yourself, this is my goal. And this goal, this is not even between me and my child, this is between me and my God. I'm holding myself to the standard and I'm praying for God's grace, God's help, and God's guidance to do that. And it's interesting because this goal, I think, is really going to be uniquely personal to each person. I worked with a mom one time, and hers was, I want to show my children how much fun life is and how much I love Jesus. That's a beautiful goal. I never would have come up with that because I'm not her. Don't forget, you're an individual. There is a unique definition here. Play with it because for some reason, God gave those kids to you. And it's probably because of things that He's planted in your heart that He wants you to teach them. So it's so interesting about this. She loved us fiercely and raised us to be independent and wanted what was best for us. This week, or the last couple of weeks, I was reminded of how much me just knowing this, how much I was living this out sometimes without even consciously being aware of it. And also, again, this is going to go back to that verse, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. We are training our kids, whether we realize it or not. See, before I even had the definition, I was training my kids to be independent. It was only when I looked inside and said, what is it I really think is important for them? And it was like to be fully functioning adults in society, to be able to take care of themselves. And it was such an immediate reaction, like that's important. And so I did that. And so a lot of times, I was teaching them, hey, this is how this is how we do this. This is how you learn for yourselves. This is how you figure things out for yourselves. This is what I would do, but also you might do it differently. I was constantly, sharing with them how I would do it, but I was always offering to them, you might be doing it differently because I was raising them to be independent. Well, so I had two realizations that it's happened, whether I like the outcome or not. So a couple of weeks ago, my daughter was driving down the road and was in an accident. And fortunately, it was not a serious accident, but it totaled out her car. And she called me afterwards and just talked with me about how she handled it and how everybody was worried about her. And she was, doing this and doing that and, calling the insurance agent and handling it 21 years old, first accident. And I was just like, so proud of her. I mean, she's got this. And she just amazes me. And she's so independent. It's amazing. And then my son, so two different instances. My son, um, the, a few days after he turned 18, he moved himself out to San Francisco, lived on his own for 6 months, fiercely independent. He was raised to be independent. He was independent. Guess what? I didn't like that so much. I'm having thoughts that he's way too young to take care of himself. The world is a big, scary place. Wait. Let's go back to that bad parent plan where I protect him from everything because his independent plan is scaring me to death. But I remind myself of my goal and I took care of myself emotionally best I could. You have good days, you have bad days. So proud of him. So very proud of him. And he just recently decided to go explore another city. So proud of him. Am I going to miss him? For sure. Um, but I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of both my kids. And I'm so proud of, I don't mean for this to sound arrogant. I hope it doesn't. But I'm so proud of me for doing the best that I was able with the tools that I had at time, for never settling, for always wanting to bring my best, for giving myself grace when I didn't bring my best, and for just going on, I guess, what I would call life's grandest adventure. Because I think there is a quote somewhere. Sorry, you guys, I'm tearing up all over the place. Trying to get a hold of myself. Um, and I'm gonna butcher this. I didn't even look this quote up, but I was just reminded of it. But something about like when you have kids, it's like wearing your heart outside your body on your sleeve for the rest of your life. And feels a little dangerous, but it is the most wonderful adventure for my life that has been. And so, anyway, I just thought now that my kids are 21 and 19, maybe it was time to peel back the curtain a little bit and explain to you, share with you some of the things that worked for me, some of the things that didn't, in the hopes that you could use this to create your own definition of what your quote good parenting would look like. And then it would give you something to kind of orient your days about so that when you have the good days and the bad days, or when somebody, on social media sharing a picture of something amazing that their kids have done, or um, you don't have to get caught up in the compare and despair, but realize that every journey is unique, that God gave these children to you and gave you to these children, and that you get to define it. And then you get to be the one that decides, are you good parenting or bad parenting? And let me say this, don't judge yourself harshly. Okay. Measure yourself sincerely against your own definition, and do not set the definition up in crazy high. It, oh, and one more thing, don't put the definition in somebody else's hands. For example, I had one parent that came to me and she's like, I said, what would good parenting look like for you? What's your definition of being a good mom? And she goes, if my kids love Jesus. And it's like, well, how far are you willing to go to hit your goal? You going to mind control them? Going to brainwash them? You're going to control their little brains and their little hearts? You're going to take away their free will? And then she realized, oh, I'm putting my definition in somebody else's hands, for them to, yeah, I can't take that from them. I can't let that be my definition. So you want the definition to be something that is within your control. Like if you'll listen to mine, I said, I I said it in like it might be part of their control, like when my child is growing up, what do I hope he or she says about me and how I parented? But the action steps were things that I could do. I can love them fiercely. I can raise them to be independent. And I can always desire what's best for them, even if it's not what I would want. There's no part of me that wanted to say, hey, yeah, son, move out to San Francisco. No, it sounds way too dangerous for my mom brain. Crazy. No. Stay safe here by my side. But I want what's best for him, as in I want what he thinks is best for him. I want him to have these experiences so he can grow. And by the way, we don't actually know what's best. So my definition of best and his definition of best might be different. And in those cases, the older they grow, the more I want to defer to that trust that they would know what that is for them. So set your own parenting test. Define it, live it out daily, and give yourself grace when you are judging yourself. Okay? You can always do better. And by the way, there's always time. It's never too late. There's time to turn relationships around. Don't be putting an end date on something that's the story's not fully written yet. All right. Whew. That was a topic. Man, I'm glad I waited 20 years to talk about this one. Oh, how to get your kids to sleep through the night. That's what I would have talked about 20 years ago. This one, it's how to give yourself grace while doing the best parenting job that you're capable of without stressing yourself and beating yourself up. Relax and enjoy the journey. That's what all the people that are ahead of us say. All the grandparents. Oh, you just got to enjoy this time because it passes so quickly. Whew. You guys, I can't tell you, now that my kids are 21 and 19, when I run into people with young kids, I bite my tongue until it bleeds almost. So I don't say that to them because I want to so badly. Enjoy it. Because I know that when your kids are 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, you're tired. It's hard. So you don't need somebody well-meaning coming up and telling you, hey, just miss it. Because right now you're just thinking, you take them and let me get a chance to miss it. Okay. I really need to end this one. I hope it's helped. If you have any questions, if you have any, reach out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook at April Bragg. You can find me on Instagram at April Bragg About Life. And if you enjoy this, like, share, subscribe, follow our YouTube channel. Much appreciated. All right. Talk to you later.